Hello and welcome back to On the Grid Podcast, Season 3, Episode 32 now, I believe. I'm Ethan Evans, your host for today's episode, joined as ever by Adrian Keita. How are you today?
I'm feeling good. I don't think my preview for Suzuka was, the optimism that I had for Ferrari, I think was a bit too far-fetched. As everybody knows, Ferrari did not get a 1-2, so I think the optimism was a bit too far-fetched. And we're back to Red Bull dominance, where it's just Max Verstappen going to be dominating for the rest of the season. I think Singapore was a bit of an anomaly in the season, and I think that's the only win Ferrari are getting. But yeah, it was a good race in Suzuka. I'm not going to deny that. A new podium sitter for someone. So yeah, I think it was a good weekend overall. I enjoyed the action, and let's just delve straight into what happened at Suzuka, shall we?
Yes, as you said, going on to Q1. So the five drivers that got knocked out. So Logan Sargent didn't manage to set a time, and then the bottom four, as you like, was Zhou Guanyu, Nico Hulkenberg, Lance Stroll, and Valtteri Bottas. So first of all, Logan Sargent, another crash, another qualifying, another crash. What do you make?
What do I make of it? Well, I think the pressure is seriously on Logan Sargent. I think he classifies. I don't know whether I think I saw a table where I think he classifies first as the most damage done to his car. I think he might be in. I think he might be top or at least within the top three in that ranking. And we spoke so highly of him before the summer break, but I think it's unraveled once again, and I think that his seat is seriously under threat. Obviously he didn't set a lap time because he crashed into heading into into the final, shall we say, final corner slash down the start finish straight, just completely binned it. I don't know what even happened. It just went wide and just lost it. But it really is a head scratcher. You're thinking, what can this man do now to save his F1 career? And I think the answer is, I don't think he can do anything to save his F1 career. I think that seeing Liam Lawson's performance, I don't know whether Red Bull are going to do the same as they did with Alex Albon, get him into the Williams team, and then potentially get him into a Red Bull powered car for 2025, for example. I think that's the likelihood that will happen. But for Logan Sargent, it's once again another disappointing weekend and another weekend without points.
Yeah, very disappointing for him. Yeah, I think if he was just slow, then it wouldn't be too bad. It wouldn't be too bad. But the fact he's slow and crashing every weekend isn't setting a good precedent for him. Also, as we said, also getting knocked out was both Alfa Romeos and Lance Stroll yet again. I think that is third consecutive Q1 exit. And since the summer break, in the last six races, he's only got into Q3 on one occasion. It's not looking good for him. He showed some early form, in the season, but since then is really tailed off. It's kind of been signified the downfall of Aston Martin, hasn't it? Really.
I think Lance Stroll just needs to retire. Pack your bags, play tennis, do that sort of stuff. We constantly talk about this man on this podcast because he's constantly out in Q1, and we have to highlight the significance of how much Fernando Alonso is carrying that Aston Martin team. I think it doesn't go unnoticed because I know Lance Stroll's father is funding the team, and they've obviously brought a multiple world champion into the team to kind of thrust the team forward and move them into the right direction. But they just simply are going backwards. They're lacking on upgrades. Their second driver, as you will, is an absolute flop and wants to retire to play tennis. I think it just sums up Aston Martin at the moment. I think the cohesion in the team is just simply not there. And Lance Stroll, I think, is a big factor to that cohesion not being there because his performances are inevitably putting the team down, and they could potentially even finish fourth at the end of this season, where they were looking dead on certain at the start of the season to finish second. Now they've tumbled behind Mercedes and Ferrari as well. I think even McLaren could catch them up. So a fifth place for them, where at the start of the season they were destined for second, it's an astonishing downfall for them. And they really need to sort it out if they want to finish in the top four this season.
Yeah, I was about to say it. Like, forget fourth. I think the battle is to keep fourth. McLaren are hot on their heels, given their impressive upturn in form over the recent races. So yeah, also out, as we said, with Nico Hulkenberg. Moving on to Q2 then, and knocked out in Q2 was Kevin Magnussen, the other of the Haas drivers, Esteban Ocon, Alex Albon, Pierre Gasly, and Liam Lawson. Liam Lawson almost getting through yet again into Q3. He was I think it was 400th off. Just how impressive has he been since he's come into the sport, particularly in qualifying, going head to head with Tsunoda?
I simply don't know how this man has not got a seat in F1. I know obviously he didn't win the F2 last season, and obviously I think he had 2 or 3 seasons at Formula 2 level. And obviously he didn't win any of them, which is a shame because the man is a very talented driver. And especially alongside Yuki Tsunoda, I know the driver pairing is quite young, but I think they complement each other very well. I think Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda, I know Yuki Tsunoda is the more experienced of the drivers, if you want to put it in quotation marks, because he's been in the sport for a longer time. But they're still very young, both of them. So I think Liam Lawson's gauged the sort of level that Yuki Tsunoda's at, especially at Yuki's home race. I know Yuki qualified into Q3 and Liam Lawson narrowly missed out. But I think the two of them are very, very matched, very head to head, very gridlocked, locking horns. And it's good to see. It's healthy competition in the team, and I think it's allowed Yuki Tsunoda to kind of breathe a little bit, because I know when Daniel Ricciardo came in, I think Yuki had a certain amount of pressure on his shoulders to perform and outperform Daniel Ricciardo, which he didn't do. So for Liam Lawson, it's another step in the right direction to potentially securing an F1 seat. For Yuki Tsunoda, it's valuable experience against a relatively same-aged driver alongside him. And I think AlphaTauri have got a fantastic asset in Liam Lawson, potentially that they could use in 2024 or in 2025 if Liam Lawson becomes available. Should Daniel Ricciardo move to Red Bull for a final bout. But yeah, most definitely the competition at AlphaTauri is very, very healthy. And Liam Lawson will only benefit from this heading into potentially a full season in F1 coming in the near future.
Yeah, well, unless it's going to be with Williams, it's not going to be next season. It's quite curious that. So obviously Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo were confirmed for next season. However, apparently there's rumours that Liam Lawson is guaranteed a seat for 2025, which is what I've heard. So I'm not sure how much of that is true, but we'll have to keep an ear out on that. Also getting knocked out in Q2, as we said, was both Alpines, who have had a bit of a downfall in fortune. But onto the top 10, onto the shootout, and it was again Max Verstappen on a return to form, getting pole position, unbelievable stuff. But Oscar Piastri on the front row. I think it's the first time he's qualified on the front row for the main race, anyway. And Lando Norris alongside him. McLaren's turn in form has been quite remarkable. They've been since Austria. Only Verstappen has got more points than Lando Norris in the championship, and only Red Bull have got more points in the constructors. Just let's talk about how good they've done, particularly this weekend.
Yeah, I don't think it's gone unnoticed. I mean, at the start of the year in Bahrain, they were 17th and 19th with, I think it was Oscar Piastri DNFing and Lando Norris finishing a couple of laps down, or even a lap down, if I'm not mistaken, in Bahrain. So to go from that end to the scale to battling for podiums and for victories is tremendous for McLaren. You even heard it from Lando Norris on the radio that they're coming for Red Bull, and they could do some serious damage in 2024 or even at the back end of this season, because I don't think they're a million miles away from Red Bull. Their top speed is there, the downforce is there, the package that they've got is tremendous. But then again, I think they've been the team that I think has upgraded a lot, especially heading into this second half of the season, because I think they had to, due to the poor nature of the car at the beginning of the season. But for them to qualify P2 and P3 on the grid, for the Japanese Grand Prix, albeit half a second behind Max Verstappen, it's just good to finally see McLaren back in form. I know they obviously scored that lone victory with Daniel Ricciardo in Monza. I think it was 21 or 22, one of the years. And I think that, like I said, I don't think they're a million miles away from getting a race victory this season. And I think it could happen this season. I think they're one or two upgrades away from nailing it completely and getting the race package to challenge Red Bull, and challenge them to the top and challenge them for a race victory, which I think it will happen this season. I think McLaren will get a victory this season, but I don't know in which race, but I just know that they will get a race victory this season. They're one or two upgrades off, like I say. And I think that if they nail it completely, I think they will get a race win under their belt.
Yeah, I can't say I disagree too much. I don't know if Red Bull will be beaten in another race. I don't think they're going to have another weekend like they did at Singapore for the remainder of the season. But I think, on current form, you have to say that McLaren are the most likely to challenge Red Bull in the future. Obviously, Mercedes have that history, which can't be discounted. Ferrari have two very exciting drivers, and on their day, as we've seen, they are the only other team to get a victory this season. But out of those three teams, Aston Martin are way off it. They're only going downhill. Off of those three teams, you've got to say McLaren are the most likely to be the ones that can take the challenge to Red Bull. So it'll be very interesting to see how that occurs here at the start of next season. But for the time being, so the rest of the top 10, so we had Charles Leclerc in fourth, Sergio Perez fifth, more struggles for him. Carlos Sainz sixth, Lewis Hamilton and George Russell seventh and eighth, Yuki Tsunoda ninth, and Fernando Alonso rounding off the top 10. I've got a little stat. So at the Bahrain Grand Prix this season and last season, Aston Martin had gained 2.3 seconds. So their fastest lap in Bahrain this year was 2.3 seconds quicker this year compared to last year. For Japan, 0.1 seconds. That just shows how much their paces fell off the cliff and how they've gone from having what is the second quickest car and, Fernando Alonso loving every minute, getting podium after podium, to now struggling to even make the top 10, even struggling to pick up some points at a crucial time of the season.
But let's not forget, at the back end of last season, I believe it was at the Japanese Grand Prix, Seb Vettel was battling the valuable points, and their car was improving. Whereas this season, we saw, obviously, from last season, their car was at an all-time high. And at the start of the season, it was an all-time high, getting podiums, and now it's slowly falling down again. Are we going to see the same correlation happen at the back end of this season heading into 2024? It could happen. But then again, I think that Aston Martin have got to strategically play their upgrades heading into 2024. And I think they've got to really nail 2024. Otherwise, it's just going to be another season where they finish fifth or sixth. So I don't think it's necessarily them falling off a cliff. I think it's just a yo-yo effect of them being at an all-time high at the start of a season, and dropping off towards the back end of the season because of what happened last season, and them trying to upgrade the hell out of the car and trying to maximize as much as possible heading into this season. So I just think it's just the side effects, should I say, of them trying to put as much thought into their car this season, and yeah, it's just seeing them fall backwards and backwards. So I don't necessarily think it's them falling off a cliff. I just think that their preparation and their judgment is a little bit off, because I think they need upgrades throughout the whole season, not just one part of the season and think that they can finish fourth with a couple of decent results here and there. I think you really need to take an example from Red Bull's book here. Just maximize your car, and you're good. That's all you need to know from Red Bull. And Aston Martin, I think, need to have a look in that page of their 2024 F1 guide, I think, and prepare themselves well for the season ahead.
Yeah, I think they actually got more points at the Japanese Grand Prix last year than this year, which says it all really in their downturn in form. Moving on then to our 1 to 10 driver ratings. Max Verstappen qualified first, finished first, a 10 out of 10 for me. I don't want to say any more about this because, he's just unstoppable. I don't think there's anything I need to say. Unbelievable performance.
Yeah, you can get a 1 out of 10 from me, but add the 0 onto the 1 as well. Yeah, it's a 10 out of 10. I mean, he was challenged into turn 1 by the two McLarens, but apart from that, he wasn't really challenged, really, was he? Finished about 20 seconds up the road from Lando Norris. Yeah, it's just dominance. Can we just move on? I feel really depressed talking about Max Verstappen really highly because us being Ferrari and Mercedes fans, I'm not going to necessarily say we want him to crumble, but I just want to see more excitement at the front of the field, not him running away with it and finishing 20 seconds up the road from the next car. I just want a bit of excitement, like we saw in Singapore and other races, just a bit more excitement. So yeah, 10 out of 10 from me. Yeah, nothing else to say. It's just barnstorming. He's just too good. He really is just too good.
Yeah, completely. Lando Norris now. He qualified in third and finished second. I've given him a 9 out of 10. I thought it was a fantastic performance from Lando. He was much quicker than Piastri this weekend, secured another great podium. And yeah, he almost got Verstappen at the start, but even on that last stint, he didn't really lose too much time to him. He finished quite a respectable 20 seconds back, which is crazy that we're even saying that's a respectable distance. But yeah, here we are.
I don't think we can say 20 seconds is respectable. Come on, we're used to a bit more of closer racing, even in the last couple of years. I know Mercedes have dominated, but we were used to seeing a bit more closer racing. This is 20 seconds. It's close to half a second. Think about it.
Compared to Verstappen? Compared to Verstappen, 20 seconds is a pretty respectable distance.
I don't care. Max Verstappen he just runs away with it. He just has fun at the front of the field. Just runs away with it. Goes, see you later, and moves on. But for Lando Norris, I gave him a 9.5 out of 10. Obviously a lot quicker than Oscar Piastri, but I think it was good to see both McLarens on the podium, and I think it gives him a lot of confidence to potentially battle further up the field. Maybe even P2, P3, they could come charging. I don't know. It could happen. But it would be a very exciting end to the season. But Lando Norris, great start. Managed his stints very well, quicker than his teammate. So yeah, 9.5 out of 10. Can't complain. Very, very good drive.
And moving on to his teammate, Oscar Piastri, I've also given him a 9 out of 10. I know he was beaten quite comprehensively from Norris, but, he's a rookie. He's got on the podium for the first proper time. He's doing unbelievable things. I think the deficit between Piastri and Norris in the championship, as well as their head-to-head, doesn't really paint the entire picture, because I think he's been right on that pace the majority of the season, and I think he's performed brilliantly. To be honest, so another 9 out of 10 for Oscar, and a great podium.
Yeah, I've settled with the same rating I gave for Lando. So for me, another 9.5 out of 10, near enough, pretty much a perfect weekend for both McLarens. And it's obviously Oscar Piastri's first ever podium, so it goes a long way. Obviously, for a rookie to be on the podium, no matter what, is a massive step in the right direction, and I think it will give him a lot of confidence heading into the final few races of the season. Like I say, he wasn't necessarily on the pace of Lando Norris, but still respectfully beat Leclerc and Hamilton and Sainz and Russell. So it goes a long way. He could have finished if he stayed behind. I think it was George Russell for a little bit longer. I think Leclerc could have caught him, and I think it could have been the P3 out the window. But then again, I don't think the McLarens were too troubled. And as soon as Piastri cleared Russell, and as soon as Leclerc cleared Russell, Oscar Piastri was long gone. So a respectable performance, a very fantastic podium, and a 9.5 out of 10 from me.
Moving on to the man you just mentioned, Charles Leclerc. He qualified in fourth and finished fourth, but I've given him a 9 out of 10. Clearly the Ferrari was the third quickest car, but he put some pressure on Piastri towards the end. He wasn't too far away from him, but he picked up some very good points for Ferrari, and they slowly but surely they're closing that gap to Mercedes. I was sat here pretty confident during the summer break, but now we're starting to get a little bit nervous. Getting a little bit shaky, but so it's another great performance from Leclerc. I think he needed this after his teammate won last time out in Singapore. He kind of needed to beat him quite comprehensively, and he done that. So a good performance from him.
Well, that's 2 weekends in a row that Ethan's saying he's getting shaky about the Constructors' Championship and P2. Well. Can I tell you, mister, it's only 20 points now. So a Ferrari win and a Mercedes flop. There we go. All it needs to happen. But yeah, I've gone with the same for Charles Leclerc. I couldn't give him what I gave Norris and Piastri because they were fantastic. But he was very good in himself. Obviously he cleared Russell. And he needed to clear Russell because Hamilton was catching him. But as soon as Leclerc cleared Russell, it was game over, I think, for Hamilton. And I think Hamilton was looking behind him rather than forwards to see the catching Carlos Sainz absolutely bomb it. Unfortunately, the other Ferrari couldn't overtake him, but it's valuable points for Ferrari nonetheless. And yeah, for Leclerc, it gives him a little bit extra confidence, I think, heading into I think it's Qatar next. So Ferrari just need that little bit extra edge of confidence to propel them onto the podium potentially. And I think a few podium finishes, silver deal for them. Silver deal for them for second in the championship. I know it's sad for you to hear what I'm trying to say, but if Ferrari can get at least 2 podiums in the last couple of races, I think they've got second in the bag. And that might be a big statement, but I generally think that could happen. And with a talented pairing of Leclerc and Sainz, I think that's going to happen. So Leclerc 9 out of 10 from me for Japan. P4, good confidence, good points, and heading into Qatar with that extra oomph. I think that he needs to get himself on a podium finish once again.
Not too sure if I agree they only need 2 podiums, because I think Mercedes could quite easily get like 3 podiums in the next 6 races, particularly the way Hamilton has been driving this season. Speaking of, he qualified in 7th, finished 5th. It's probably the best result they could have hoped for, to be honest, for Mercedes. You could say they had the 4th quickest car, and I think this has been a bit of a trend from Hamilton in particular, that Mercedes don't always have the 2nd quickest car, but Hamilton continues to extract the maximum performance from them. He should have been let go with that battle for Russell. Why that was allowed to happen in the first place was, who knows? I think maybe Russell was a little bit defensive and a bit upset that his strategy didn't work. But it almost cost them that. With Sainz was gaining dramatically on them towards the end of the race, and I think if Russell held on for another corner or two, then Hamilton's finishing 6th, not 5th. So it was important that they beat at least one of the Ferraris, and they did so. So hopefully, we're looking at these next 3 races: Qatar, COTA, Mexico. Hopefully, Mercedes have a better car than Ferrari in at least 2 of those. So I've given Hamilton though an 8 out of 10. I thought it was a very good performance.
I've given Hamilton an 8.5 out of 10. I went 0.5 higher than you. I think obviously to make 2 positions is crucial, and it was crucial to make those couple of places. Like you say, Sainz was coming, and it was catching at a rate of knots. but I generally do feel that Russell was a little bit too stubborn. I mean, they did have that coming together where Russell got pushed off the track by Hamilton. And I'm not gonna say there's a lot of argy-bargy in the team, but I don't know whether Mercedes even know who's the number one driver, because they're quite evenly matched on pure pace. I know Lewis Hamilton is ahead of George in the championship, um, and obviously is a seven-time world champion as well. It's not going to go under the radar. But I generally do feel that they are quite evenly matched this season. And I do feel that Russell wanted a little bit of fair treatment, a little bit of teamwork, I wouldn't say close racing. I think he wanted a little bit of space and he didn't get that. So I think that's why he was a bit angry at Lewis Hamilton. But for Hamilton to hold off Carlos Sainz in the end was crucial for Mercedes and their hopes to keep in hold of second in the Constructors' Championship there. So Lewis Hamilton for me, P5 finish, 8.5 out of 10. Very good race, and very good points for Mercedes.
I think there's only, talking about that, Russell maybe want a bit of a fairer fight. Their head-to-head stats. So in the race, Hamilton is beating Russell 12-4, which I think tells you everything you need to know. He's only one of two drivers to get points at every single race. If there's going to be a number one, if there's going to be preferential treatment, it should go to Lewis Hamilton. Not even bringing up the 7 world titles he's won and the countless other title fights he's been in. If Mercedes is going to win the Drivers' Championship, it's going to be with Lewis Hamilton next year. There's no debate in that. Russell is not at the level quite yet to fight for a Drivers' World Championship, but Hamilton is. Hamilton has always been, and yeah, if Mercedes is going to get back to winning ways, it's going to be with Lewis Hamilton.
But do you think that if they are to grind out this result of second in the Constructors' Championship, shouldn't they be thinking of the same kind of playing field that Ferrari have got, where there's no clear number one driver and they're both treated as equals? I know Lewis Hamilton, you've just said there the head-to-head is clearly in Lewis Hamilton's favour, but George Russell did beat Lewis Hamilton one year, and that shouldn't go under the radar. But George Russell is an extremely talented driver. I know this season might have not gone his way, but do you think that for the team game, do you think that maybe Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton, and George Russell work as a pair and work in cohesion to get this second place? Because one crash and it all goes tumbling down the drain.
Well, you almost saw that on Sunday, to be quite frank. But the thing is, they have played the team game. Mercedes, you have to say, they've been, even with Bottas and Hamilton, they were very fair. They didn't give team orders too much. There was a level playing field at the start of the season. You go out, if you're outperforming the other, then you get the preferential treatment. Russell's had a tough year. Hamilton's had an exceptional year, which I think has gone very under the radar. Like I said, I think there's only been 2 or 3 races where Mercedes have actually had the second quickest car this season. Usually it's been either third or fourth quickest car. And the fact that Lewis Hamilton is chasing down Perez for second in the World Championship speaks volumes to how well he's performed. So I do think that if Mercedes are going to win the title next season, if they have the car to do so, if they are to win the Drivers' Championship, it's going to be with Lewis Hamilton. Russell can pitch in with the occasional win, but he's not quite at that level, and I think that's been evident this season. But if they do get that race-winning car, I think these sorts of battles could hinder the team, where they're going to take points off each other rather than where you've got a clear number one and number two like they do at Red Bull, where if Perez is winning, then he's given up the position to Verstappen to maximise his points total. So yeah, I think, as I said, Hamilton's performing exceptionally well, and I think Russell just has a little bit more performance to find. Moving on now to Carlos Sainz, the other of the Ferraris, qualified in 6th and finished 6th. I've given him a 7 out of 10. I think he'll be disappointed with that. Yeah, I can see your face, but he's been beaten by a Mercedes in what is the third quickest car this weekend. I know he got hung out to dry a little bit with the strategy, so maybe I could up that to an 8. But I just think that it wasn't as good a performance as we've seen from Carlos. Certainly not at where he's been, the level he's been at since the summer break. Do you know what? Actually, no, I'll up it to an 8. Maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh. I'll give him an 8 because, yeah, he did get hung out to dry with the strategy a little bit and had to fight his way back through and almost got Hamilton right at the end. But yeah, maybe if he had one more lap, he would have and got that 5th place finish. So yeah, an 8 out of 10 for me. You've convinced me.
I was about to say I made that face because I was dead certain you were about to give him one less rating. Well, 1.5 less rating from what I gave him. For what Lewis Hamilton got. So I mean, I gave him an 8 as well. I'm not going to deny it. Like you say, I think if he had one more lap, I think it could have been in the bag. It would have been a P4 and a P5 for Ferrari instead of a P4 and a P6. But yeah, completely hung out to dry. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. Both of them got damage, of course, on lap 1, with that accident. And I don't think that kind of played a part in it as well. In them kind of not having the fantastic races that they could have. But they still Hamilton and Sainz, they still battled very well, very fairly. And Sainz could have got him if he had one extra lap, but unfortunately he didn't. He didn't go. I think Sainz played a little bit too conservatively. And he saw that Mercedes tried to play his game against him. It didn't work. But yeah, an 8 out of 10 from me. Carlos, like you say, didn't have the best of drives, but still valuable points. And nonetheless, he had to kind of battle through the field because he was hung out to dry by Ferrari, unfortunately. But yeah, 8 out of 10, good drive, but not up to Carlos Sainz standards after the summer break.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. Yeah, so moving on now to George Russell. As we said, tried to play that whole Carlos Sainz tactic against them. He qualified down an 8 and finished 7th. I've given him a 6 out of 10. I can see he tried to make the one-stop work, but it was clearly not working. And then he comes onto the radio saying that they should try and use Sainz's tactic of keeping the DRS. Neither Mercedes had the pace to keep Sainz behind him. We saw that the lap afterwards, where Hamilton stretched the advantage to 2 seconds. He was told to let Russell have the DRS, so he loses a second there. And despite giving him the DRS, Russell loses the position to Sainz anyway. It's not the greatest weekend. Maybe he needed a bit of a better comeback drive. He got some points, but yeah, he needs an upturn in form. He needs a solid result. Maybe a P4 or a podium would be great for him next time out in Qatar. But yeah, he really needs a good, solid performance with solid points total to really build his confidence back up.
Yeah, I've gone with 0.5 less than you for George Russell. I gave him a 5.5 because I mean it was just an average race. It wasn't anything to shout about because he tried to make the one-stop strategy work. I think the only driver in the top 10 that tried to do that, and obviously it wasn't going to work because everyone else around him, oh yeah, let's use the 2-stop, using the noggins strategy. Yeah, that plays into part in F1. But I don't think George Russell thought of that. And he was just kind of fading away, and instead of finishing near Hamilton, a P4 or a P5, if he was to do a 2-stop potentially, he finished 7th. And yeah, he was just nowhere near the pace of Sainz and Hamilton. And him going on the radio saying, "Oh, let's play that game against Carlos Sainz." It's not going to happen. Your pace is inferior to the Ferrari, and it was that weekend, and we saw what happened. So 5.5, it was a very, very average George Russell performance. And like you say, something needs to happen because I don't think the spark is being ignited at the moment in George Russell's kind of brain and his heart. I think he's just slowly fading away. I think the sooner the new season comes, the better for George Russell.
Moving on now to Fernando Alonso, qualified down in 10th and finished 8th. I've given him an 8 out of 10. So I think, that Aston Martin was a bit poor, I would say. I won't swear on the podcast.
I heard that.
You heard nothing. I'll give him an 8 out of 10 because Aston Martin was nowhere near good enough. If you could just edit that out. Yeah, as I said, how far the car has fell off since the start of the season. He had a great start, got up to 6th, but just he didn't have nowhere near the same pace as the Mercedes or the Ferraris. So yeah, he's couldn't have hoped for any better. Held off the Alpines quite comfortably, never looked in too much trouble, and finished up with some solid points. 8 out of 10.
I went with a 7 out of 10 for Fernando Alonso, and I think the word you was looking for was shoddy. Shoddy was the word you were looking for.
That's it.
I know exactly. I've got your back. The word you were looking for was shoddy. But yeah, we know how much Aston Martin are struggling at the moment with that car, and to make up 2 places, albeit with Sergio Perez retiring and then unretiring, which we're going to speak about in a moment. And obviously Yuki Tsunoda falling down the order as well to finish 12th. That's where we made up the 2 places. But to finish in the points, I think it's just an added bonus for Aston Martin in the battle with McLaren for 4th place, which I don't think will be a battle for much longer. I think it'll be more like a demolition. It'll be a demolition job by McLaren sooner rather than later. But yeah, 7 out of 10. Points are points, and that's exactly what Aston Martin need. But like I say every episode, they need upgrades. That's what they need. They need upgrades. Lawrence Stroll, listen to On the Grid. Thank you.
Yeah, or maybe they blew their entire budget at the start of the season, which is why they were so good. Who knows? Yeah, not good enough. Moving on now to Esteban Alpine. So it's Esteban Ocon in the Alpine, not Esteban Alcon in the Alpine. Qualified down in 14th and finished 9th. I've got to give him a 7 out of 10. I thought it was a good comeback. I don't really understand his whole beef with Gasly because, Ocon gave him the place and then he got given it back when Gasly couldn't get past Alonso. So maybe that wasn't communicated with the right way or something, but 7 out of 10 for Ocon for me. About as good as Alpine can hope for from where they are really in the cars that are ahead of them.
I love a bit of inter-team beef. It's actually quite fun. Like you say, I don't know what Gasly is on about. Oh, I'm quicker than him. Let me keep the position. Mate, you swapped positions. You swap back if you don't get the driver ahead of you. It's as simple as that. Follow team orders and you'll be okay. And I mean, he finally obliged on the last lap. I generally thought that he wasn't. I was looking at the mini map and I was just thinking, yeah, he's keeping this P9 to himself, isn't he? He's not letting Ocon through, but he did oblige. And for Esteban Ocon to gain 5 places, the second most at the Grand Prix was very good. It was a great comeback drive. Obviously, both Alpines didn't qualify into Q3, which is another thing that they've got to highlight for themselves. They generally need to up their qualifying performances if they are to battle inside the top 10 more often than not. But yeah, 7 out of 10 from me. It was a good performance, valuable points. And for Alpine, it's just all about keeping that momentum going and keeping the points tally ticking and getting triple digits. I think that's the crucial aim that they've got to aim for by the end of the season, triple digits in points.
Yeah, most definitely. Moving on now to Pierre Gasly, qualified 12th and finished 10th. Again, 7 out of 10. There wasn't too much to split the Alpines for me. I can't really give them a different grade. I know, what's his name? Ocon made up a few more positions, but is it, or was it much better? No, I don't think so. I think they had very similar pace. And yeah, I think Ocon just got the better start and made up the positions early, and then Gasly kind of had to play a bit second fiddle. Obviously, they got swapped over, but then had to swap back because there wasn't the pace in that car to challenge Fernando Alonso of all people. So 7 out of 10 as well.
Yeah, I don't think much split the two Alpines at this race. I know Esteban Ocon made up three more places than Gasly. But I think they were very evenly matched. I don't think much split them. Their pace was generally the same. Everything was same, even though Gasly said he was quicker. Everything pretty much was the same, apart from the positions that they made in the qualifying positions. So yeah, a 7 out of 10 from me. The Alpines, like I said previously, valuable points for them, and they just got to keep it rolling into the last couple of races this season.
And moving on to the drivers who just missed out on points, Liam Lawson qualified 11th and finished 11th. Another 8 out of 10 for me. A great performance. How he doesn't have a seat for 2024 yet, I have no idea. There is still hope. Maybe he gets that Williams seat, but it doesn't look likely. He's been tremendous since he's come into the sport, and he's beaten Tsunoda again. Let's also just note that he hasn't been beaten by Tsunoda in a race so far. Yeah, exceptional drive.
Yeah. I really don't know what you can say about Liam Lawson. An 8 out of 10 from me. In an AlphaTauri car that, like we say, I probably think it's at the back end of the grid. Generally saying, you wouldn't think it's near enough the midfield. It's a lower pack car. But for Liam Lawson to continuously get close to Q3 and close to points in the last couple of races that he's raced for AlphaTauri, how he does not have a 2024 seat in Formula One, I will never know. It baffles me. It really, really does baffle me. But you never know. He might have a seat on the side. You never know. It could happen. Mid-season driver swap. Did anybody call for that? Maybe, maybe not. But yeah, 8 out of 10 performance. He just continues to excel in Formula One, and with rumors saying that he's got a 2025 seat confirmed, I think that's AlphaTauri calling and Daniel Ricciardo going to Red Bull in 2025 as Sergio Perez's contract runs out next year. So that's all she wrote, and I think that's the sort of rumor that we're getting. So Liam Lawson is star for the future, and I think when he gets on the grid, especially with his fellow F2, obviously rival in Oscar Piastri back in the day, I think those two will have some tasty battles along the way. Maybe not if Liam Lawson is at AlphaTauri, maybe if he makes it up to Red Bull. But yeah, 8 out of 10 from me. Liam Lawson, another tremendous drive.
Onto his teammate, Yuki Tsunoda, started 9th and finished 12th. I've given him a 6 out of 10, dropped a few positions. You know, maybe when he started 9th, he could put a bit more of a challenge for points. I know they weren't too far off the Alpines, but again, they didn't really challenge them either. And to fall below your rookie teammate who's only driven 4 races is not a good look, really, for Yuki Tsunoda. He has got his contract confirmed for the next season at his home Grand Prix, so that's nice for him. But I think that if he isn't going to show the type of performances that we were used to seeing at the start of the season, you know, after next season, he could be in a little bit of trouble. He could be, you know, one of those drivers whose seat is up for debate.
I've got a very interesting question before I go on to Yuki Tsunoda. I know you've got it on hand. Are you able to tell me what sort of average rating Liam Lawson has in the last 4 races compared to Yuki Tsunoda? I'm generally interested in how the two are kind of like against each other, how they're faring.
Well, I will just, you know, preface this by saying we also, you know, judge it against the driver, don't we? So when Verstappen goes off and wins by 30 seconds, we sometimes give him a 9 because, you know, it's Max Verstappen. Liam Lawson is currently 3rd in our 1 to 10 driver rankings.
And I think that's all I need to know.
There you go. I'm not going to say where Yuki Tsunoda is, but he is not in the top 10.
That's all you need to know.
In the last 5 races, Tsunoda has had those 2 DNFs on the first lap, so we haven't been able to really rank him that fairly. But In the Netherlands, he got a 5.5. In Japan, he got a 6. So compare that to Lawson, who got a 7 in the Netherlands and an 8 in Japan. So it's not looking too good for Tsunoda at this point.
Is it the car or is it the driver? I generally do think it's the driver, because they've got an evenly matched car at AlphaTauri. They're not going to be dashing with a dabble of sprinkle that Red Bull have, and the straight line speed that Ferrari had at Monza, and the downforce and the engine power that McLaren had. They're not going to have that. So I generally do think it's the driver, and I think Tsunoda has released the accelerator pedal a little bit. And I've stuck with a 6 as well. I think when you start, like you say, when you start inside the top 10, I think you have to finish inside the top 10. I don't think there's, especially at your home race as well. How good would it have been to finish inside the points in Japan with so many people around the track watching you? But Yuki Tsunoda just didn't deliver that. Lost 3 places, which is incidentally the most lost places from the people that finished the race. And he just kind of crumpled. Was nowhere to be seen in relation to his teammate, who started 11th and finished ahead of him, and was just gazumped by the 2 Alpines and by Fernando Alonso. So I think there you have it. I think Tsunoda is lacking a little bit of focus, and I think when Daniel Ricciardo returns, I think that focus will be restored once again, because I don't think Yuki Tsunoda has taken Liam Lawson very seriously. I think he's found it a little bit of a pushover, seeing a rookie teammate being like, oh yeah, okay, he's going to be in the seat for probably the next 3 or 4 races, and that's about it. I don't really need to perform here, but you need to perform in every single race. I know he's had his seat confirmed, but I don't think this race has gone for him, done him any favors for potentially securing a 2024 seat, 2024, 2025, sorry. But yeah, it's a hard one to take for Yuki Tsunoda, but I think he really needs to learn that he can't underestimate his teammates, and he really needs to get his head down, and work hard and focus on challenges ahead and finishing inside the points a lot more frequently.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Moving on now to Zhou Guanyu. He qualified down in 19th and finished 13th. On the face of it, that's a pretty good result. He's made up 6 places there. It's the same, I think, or it's one worse than what he done last weekend. The problem was he only finished ahead of the 2 Haas's. They're the only 15 drivers finished this race. He only finished ahead of the 2 Haas's, and qualifying has been a big issue for him this season. I just didn't realize how bad it was. He's only got out of Q1 5 times this season, Zhou Guanyu, and he's only done it once in the last 9 races. So he needs to be improving that qualifying performance. He had Bottas on the ropes at the start of the season, didn't he? But now he's losing in both head-to-heads against him. He's being shown up a little bit by his more experienced teammate. He's got the seat for next year. He needs to really, really knuckle down, because we were saying at the start of the season, he's done exceptionally well. He's had some great performances, got some good points, and was all around just beating Bottas comprehensively, which hasn't been the case in the last few races. So 4 out of 10 for me.
Oh crap! I didn't think you'd go so harsh. I gave him a 6. I know on the flip side, we're thinking, yes, he's finished ahead of the 2 Haas's, but I don't think he was expecting to finish higher than that. I don't think he was necessarily going to trouble Yuki Tsunoda, and I don't think he was going to trouble the 2 Alpines. Stick a new engine in there, and for Qatar he'll be all right. He'll finish inside the points, no doubt. But yeah, I give him a 6 out of 10. I think, yes, okay, he's finished only ahead of the 2 Haas's, but I mean, he's still made up places, and he's still finished 13th. So I gave him a bit of a consolation prize. I gave him the same grade as Yuki Tsunoda. So yeah, 6 out of 10 from me. It's an average rating for me. He's not done brilliantly, but he's not done too badly.
Moving on to Nico Hülkenberg. He qualified down in 18th and finished 14th. I've given him a 5. No, sorry, I've also given him a 4 out of 10. I thought he was very anonymous this weekend. It's not the Nico Hulkenberg we're used to seeing. Um, Usually likes a bit of a fight to get amongst it, particularly in qualifying to at least get out of Q1. But yeah, wasn't to be this weekend. He was comprehensively beaten by his teammate in qualifying, and he got quite fortunate in the race with what happened to K-Mag.
Yeah. Also, I wouldn't say I went for a 4 out of 10. I went up with a 5. Very average, very anonymous, and it's not the typical Nico Hulkenberg that we see every race. Qualifying is usually a strong suit, and qualifying 18th, only ahead of Zhou Guanyu and Logan Sargent, is just baffling. You was at least expecting him to finish inside maybe Q2, maybe like 13th, 14th, but he didn't do that, and he was beat by his teammate in qualifying, but he beat his teammate in the race, so that's a consolation prize once again for another driver. But yeah, a 5 out of 10, very anonymous, very, very average race for Nico Hulkenberg.
And on to the final of the finishers, Kevin Magnussen. He qualified in 15th and finished 15th. I've given him a 6 out of 10 because I thought he was quite unlucky. He was beating Hulkenberg. He was in a decent position until Sergio Perez decided to. I'm not even in the attempt to explain it. He'd done whatever he'd done. Went for the move from a mile away, and surprise, surprise, they crashed. And I think the amount of time he would have lost by being facing the wrong way, and then if it done any damage to the car, he never really had a chance after that. So 6 out of 10 because he was beating his teammate and because that incident was not his fault at all.
I went with the same rating as Nico Hulkenberg. I settled with a 5 out of 10. I think both Haas drivers kind of had a very, very average weekend. And I think that's one word you can describe Haas this season: average, very, very average. And similarly to AlphaTauri, they've been lacking upgrades, but then again, finishing so low in the Constructors' Championship doesn't help with funding and bonus prize money and whatnot. So 5 out of 10 from me for K-Mag. Very average, same as his teammate, just average.
And now moving on to the retirees, and I think quite a few of these we can skittle off quickly. Alex Albon, he qualified in 13th. I've given him a 6 out of 10. He was involved in that lap 1 incident. Apparently, he just tried to see how it went, just tried to put some laps through it. But it was quite obvious that the damage was serious and he wasn't going to be able to get any sort of result, and he was forced to retire. So a 6 out of 10 from me because, decent qualifying. It's what we kind of expect from Albon to be qualifying around that mark, maybe pushing into Q3, but it wasn't to be on this occasion. And you can't really judge him off the race because he's done the best he could.
Yeah, I also settled with a 6 out of 10. It's hard to kind of do anything once you get clattered into on lap 1 at Suzuka. It's really, the track is very, very tough. A lot of downforce needed, and especially with his floor damage, he wasn't going anywhere. Nothing was going to come off it, and he had to retire. So it's 6 out of 10. Good qualifying performance once again for him to get into Q2, but the race was just hampered by damage and having to retire from a race, which realistically was just a racing incident on lap 1.
Yeah, moving on now to his teammate Logan Sargent, qualified 20th and did not finish. I've given him a 2 out of 10. He crashed into Bottas, which caused him to retire, his reasoning for it is the weirdest reasoning. He thought Bottas would give him a bit more space because he saw his lockup, despite the fact Bottas was passing him on the right and he locked up his front left. So unless Bottas has some sort of spidey sense, then I don't know how he's supposed to avoid that one. So yeah, 2 out of 10. He also crashed in qualifying, and if you saw the face on the mechanics, then you've got to go out and feel for them because they're repairing that car twice a weekend at this rate.
Yeah, 1 out of 10 from me for Logan Sargent. Poor weekend, crashes everywhere. Let's move on.
Well, I feel that this could maybe be slightly better. Lance Stroll qualified 17th and did not finish. He made up some points at the start, played some places, should I say, at the start, but he kind of got up to where he should have started, really, which was around the 12th mark. I've given him a 3 out of 10 because I've actually been a little bit nice because the retirement wasn't actually his fault. It looked as if the rear wing was basically hanging off. So a 3 out of 10 from me.
I also settled for a 3 out of 10 for Logan Sargent, for Lance Stroll. It's very similar when you look at your notes and you see SAR ahead of STR. They're very similar. That's why I'm only getting confused with Logan Sargent and Lance Stroll. But for Lance Stroll, I settled with a 3 out of 10. Yeah, I fancy giving Lance Stroll a 1 out of 10 just to make me feel better. Because yeah, this guy just wants to retire to play tennis, and I think his F1 career is in the bin already. Well, it was already in the bin before it started. I mean, the highlight of his career was that podium for Williams. That's about it. None of the podiums for Racing Point. That's all you need to say about Lance Stroll. Made up some places, but that was about it. Then retired with his rear wing falling off. So 3 out of 10.
Yeah, I will just do my weekly reminder that Fernando Alonso has finished in the top 10 on 15 of the 16 races, and Lance Stroll has finished in them in 8, and it has a third of the points. And then moving on to Sergio Perez, qualified 5th, did not finish, 1 out of 10. Don't need to say anything else.
Yes, Sergio Perez slander time for me. Ethan had cut it short. Idiot. What a Mexican drongo. Is he taking drugs or something before the race? Because yeah, I don't know what he's trying. Then coming out and then retiring again. I know they served that 5-second time penalty, which I think was fair enough. But incidentally, another stat on the Grid podcast. Sergio Perez's pit stop was the second longest after Bottas's in Monaco, 40 minutes, compared to Bottas's 40 hours. So yeah, make of that what you will. But yeah, 1 out of 10 from me. Yeah, disgraceful.
Yeah, how they're allowed to bring him back out just to avoid the penalty for the next race, I don't have a clue. But last but definitely not least, because of some of the drivers we just listed off, Valtteri Bottas qualified 16th, obviously did not finish. I've given him 6 out of 10. He couldn't really do much with the retirement. He beat his teammate in qualifying. He was a bit of a passenger, really. So you can't judge him too harshly, I don't think. So a 6 out of 10 from me.
I've settled with a 5 out of 10 for Valtteri Bottas. Yeah, it's just one of them weekends where the retirement is unavoidable. I don't know whether he had his spidey senses activated, because I think Finnish people generally do have very good spidey senses, and he could have avoided a crash. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Definitely couldn't. But yeah, I've gone with a 5 out of 10. I think it's just an average weekend for Valtteri Bottas. And yeah, I don't think he could have done much this weekend, and hopefully he's going to bounce back in Qatar.
And that is all from this episode of On the Grid Podcast. Thank you, Adrian, for joining me. We will be back next week reviewing our atrocious predictions for the Japanese Grand Prix and looking ahead to the second ever Qatar Grand Prix. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.